Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever you are in the world today. So it's March 9th. Bitcoin is doing its slow digression down into $20,000. We'll see if it hits 19. But, let's be clear, there's absolutely nothing good in the news this week from the financial markets. And so that has a lot more to do with why Bitcoin's dropping. I just returned last week from ETH Denver. And I want to say, just as a quick note, there is absolutely no crypto winter there. The rate of innovation, the number of developers, the number of kind of interested parties there was absolutely just fabulous to see. Really exciting. I got to say, I didn't really see much innovation. I saw a lot of, copying. Here's something that's mildly innovative, and then, here's 20 clones of it. So I didn't come away extremely impressed from kind of the light years of moving the asset class forward. But again, there was a lot of interest, there was a lot of innovation, there was a lot of things that were happening there. So I really want to kind of say we're not in a winter, we're certainly in a bear, but there's quite a lot of blockchain dev work happening. With me today is Mike from Threedium, and I think he can absolutely relate with kind of those thoughts a little bit. You guys are very much Web3. You're working on a number of protocols. But before we get into kind of what you do today, Mike, if you wouldn't mind, let's start off with the audience of kind of where you came from and how you got here today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I started my early career, first job out of school, walked straight into a sales opportunity. So I had originally studied politics. I moved to Washington, D.C. and wanted to work on Capitol Hill and change the world. Quickly realized you cannot do that working as a staffer on Capitol Hill. So got a sales job with Berkshire Hathaway's Business Wire. So stepped right into the world of news, media, public relations, investor relations. At the time, the big topic of the markets was really focused on the use of social media for disclosure purposes. So you had the CEO of Sun Microsystems, Jonathan Schwartz, tweeting out his earnings release, and the SEC saying, no, you can't use Twitter for that. And he's saying, watch me. And he would tweet out his earnings release in what became called notice and access, which really disrupted the overall financial disclosure market. And what I mean by that is the news ecosystem around financial and regulatory markets. So I had a front row seat to what was happening here in Washington, D.C. I left.
Real quick on that note, if you would mind, explain to any viewers that may not understand how big of a deal that was, because the markets had previous to that been reliant on these, timed disclosures of these board calls and everything else that they would listen into.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think that like Tesla's earnings call has now become kind of a media event. But if you rewind, really not more than 10 years ago, those were sort of closed door private sessions. You had to be a shareholder in order to get the invite. It wasn't really widely disclosed because, to your point, and the reason of its significance is there was a sort of an industrial complex around these companies. That Thomson Reuters comes to mind. Everyone has probably heard that name, but the way that the 10K filing got submitted into the Edgar database, which was the official retrieval system for these quarterly filings, there was a whole system around it.
Yeah.
And so the moment social media comes on the scene and you've got CEOs tweeting out their earnings, it circumnavigated all of that system.
Yeah, and it was a major disruption to the market because if you suddenly have inside information that earnings are up, then it's the first mover. And before this, as you said, there was a regular scheduled program. At 9:01, the conference will start. At 9:10 is the time that the earnings will be announced, and at 9:11, everyone's going to be trading. And so I love that comparison you just gave us some disruptive technology that we take for granted today. That actually had while nobody thought of Twitter as being a financial tool, it did really shape the markets. And it's interesting that you were right there to watch that happen.
Yeah, so that kind of is a good segue. I left Business Wire. I went to my largest client at the time was a publicly traded defense contractor here in Washington, D.C. that was standing up a global digital marketing team. So long story short is this is really where I learned the ins and outs of not just social media marketing, but doing some of the first integrations of Eloqua and Salesforce and what have now become marketing automation platforms where those things were hard coded. So I spent about 3 years inside of Computer Sciences Corporation, now DXC Technologies, doing a bunch of systems integration. I was running the global digital marketing team. I stood up some employee advocacy programs based in my expertise and knowledge over the prior 6 years in working in the social media space. I left CSC, and this is really that combination of the social digital marketing world and that financial regulatory world. I started out as the social media manager at Navy Federal Credit Union. By the time I left, I was running the entire digital marketing team. So email, web, and the social media channels, including the customer service component of the social media channel, which I really helped stand up. That was some great learnings for me being inside of a financial institution, now working on the other side of how to use these tools and channels to communicate.
And the thing that's interesting about that is, there's a lot of marketing people that make their way over into Web3 or Web2. They just, kind of transition over from marketing to products or that type of thing. And, but when you're marketing either financial or medical products, there's a lot of rails around what you can do and why. And I think that you having that I think that's where this is going to become a very interesting conversation here shortly. Because having that knowledge and that kind of institutional guide rails that are in your head of like, this is what I want to do, but can I legally do it? And that's not a question that a lot of people in Web3 ask is, can I? It's generally asked for forgiveness later. And right now Gensler is making very clear that's not a good strategy.
We'll get back to the SEC for sure. Cause I have some good takes there. And in fact, some of the systems and campaigns that I stood up at Navy Federal, I ran one of the first UGC campaigns with a hashtag in an NFL commercial. So it was one of the first, it was called hashtag join the family. And it was a Navy Federal commercial that ran the hashtag with a call to action to join, share a photo and tell us how you became a member of the credit union. Simple, straightforward campaign, you'd think, except UGC campaigns, credit union, financial institution, do you own the right to reshare the photo? So I worked with the technology community, and I worked with and made friends with the compliance team inside of the credit union, and I found a way to do sort of double opt-in permission, gain permission from the person as they share it, so that you now have a marketing asset. And the whole point there is, I think I do see myself very much as a tech innovator, as a technologist when it comes to marketing, and also, to your point, aware of how businesses have to operate within some construct of a legal framework in order to protect themselves and sometimes to protect their customers. So yeah, I learned a lot working inside of a financial institution rooted in the military, trying to drive social and digital innovation.
Yeah, that was a PhD in and of itself. I always say that we're defined by our 10,000 hours, and that's certainly one of those educations that's just unparalleled in this upcoming world.
Yeah, so I had stayed in good connection with the then CFO of Business Wire and then an incoming CEO. So Kathy Barron-Tamrez had retired. There was a new CEO coming into Business Wire, where I had started my career, learned all of that financial regulation. They had watched me go on to the stints that I just described. And I had an opportunity to come back to Business Wire as the vice president of digital strategy, running essentially a global digital marketing team designed to support the sales engine. And at that time, the market had completely changed. Social media had become the norm. Businesses were looking for new and interactive ways to create news, video, transcribing of those earnings releases into short form content was just becoming a thing that people were doing. So I was looking for new products, new ways to reinvent a 60, 70-year-old company, thinking about interactive media and how could you make the press release come alive. People had talked about the social media press release back in the day. I was
Hmm.
trying to think of what is the new uh, sort of, maybe at the time I wasn't calling it this, but the Web3 press release,
Yeah.
because what it ultimately led me to was Threedium. So I had come back to Business Wire. I was studying what was cutting edge on the web. I've built uh, dozens and dozens of websites. I've seen everything on the internet that there is to see. And here comes Threedium, introduced to me from a mentor of mine. Um, and the best way to describe the introduction is somebody sent me a link to a 3D and augmented reality link that Threedium had published. I pulled it up on my phone and I I showed it to my son. I showed it to my then 6-year-old son, and he immediately put his fingers on my phone screen and swirled around this object. And I didn't know that he knew that it did that. And I think as an analyst of the market, as somebody who understands and deeply respects technology and the web, and having seen everything on the internet, I knew immediately that this was the new cutting edge of where the internet was going, into this new immersive world. Uh, at the time, nobody was calling it the metaverse, but here we are in
Yeah.
2023. And
And I think we'd all like to stop calling it the metaverse now that
yes,
Zuckerberg has kind of stolen that name for us. We use immersive technology around here as much as we possibly can. But I love that story, and I love the thought. Just for people that don't understand, most likely what Mike has been through. And Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong. But when you say you've built, dozens and dozens of websites, I'm going to bet that these are enterprise level, institution size
correct.
websites with, generally 6 to 8 figure budgets,
Right.
depending on how big they are, and massive teams and scales behind those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Uh, the CSC website was built on a custom CMS. I think we probably had uh, close to 100,000 content pages. We're talking 6 zones in 12 languages. Having gone through a full redesign, I worked with MRM out of New York. So you're doing full scale content migration, full scale content design and migration, and
Yeah.
um, there was no AI doing it. We were creating it.
People actually had to work, and they had to know what they were doing versus some script kiddies that are bouncing around. So, but the point on that is that, when you're designing in Web 1 and Web 2, there's some common languages that, even if you're building a custom CMS, a content management system, for those of you that don't know what that means, if you're building these types of things, you still can bring on outside developers, and they relatively understand what you're working on very quickly. And as long as it's, notated right, you can scale up and down teams relatively well. The concept of that modular building approach that Mike's talking about is, very hard to do. If you hire the wrong team that's coming in, after, the first team kind of builds the framework and the second team's going to be building something else, if they're not fully aligned, you end up with this mix match bunch of garbage. And it's incredibly complex, incredibly hard symphony to create. Web 3 is kind of that evolutionary phase of this modular approach that eventually we want to get to. So, to hear that you transition from, Web 1 to Web 2 to now to Web 3, there's a lot of institutional knowledge of how to build things at scale that I think most people take for granted. That these sites just exist and they're easy to do. They're not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take this at a couple levels, um, and I'll bring it to the Web3 side of things because I love your description there of like this modularity that I think even folks who've been in the Web3 blockchain space for a long time maybe take for granted, in terms of these components of the wallet and the access and self custody are
Yeah.
all contained. But I'll start with, when I first came into Threedium, uh, this was so 2 years exactly now. I've been here 24 months. Um, I knew and looked under the hood at the software as a service approach that the team had taken to build out this 3D engine. And what I mean by that is exactly what you described, that I wanted to ensure that there was scalability built into the product, that this was not a one off. sort of custom designed website that anybody could, with the right amount of computing power, you could put this beautiful 3D asset in augmented reality on a computer. But what if I need to do it 1,000 times? Or what if I need to do it 100,000 times? And I need to do it programmatically. I need it to be able to publish a SKU across my web URLs by running a script. And I think that approach is how I validated the tech, to know that, yes, the scalability, and it's really what is and makes our platform so unique, is that is the approach that the team took, a headless API, to get into some of the technical piece of that really allows us to plug into any system and be modular, be a part of that back-end ecosystem to allow brands, retailers, individual creators to publish these immersive 3D and augmented reality experiences right on their e-commerce, right in their mobile website, use them on social media, publish them as display ads, etc. And I'll get into the cool stuff that we're doing, but I love the take there on the modularity. I think it
Yep.
applies to the software as a service approach in the tech, and also why we are able to walk so comfortably into this Web3 space. It's been a natural fit for us over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I love that, and we'll get to Threedium here in a second. But what I hear, and just to regurgitate a little bit, is you spent millions and millions and millions of dollars building these these websites, these custom CMSs and everything else, and at the end of the day, your content's unlocked. It's stuck in these. You can't just easily take your content that you built, you own. These are your words, your videos, everything else that your clients built, and easily move them over to another platform. And because they're locked in that platform, that's the SaaS model. Like
Right.
Salesforce has built an empire based on, like, you can leave, good luck. It's you're kind of stuck there. And so the idea that we can take the bits and pieces and the content that we provide, and if you're done with a single provider, it should be a couple clicks of the mouse and you just migrate somewhere else. We're not there, but I know enough about Threedium that suddenly we do have the ability to kind of modularize pieces of it now, hopefully that's something that will be unlocked here in the future. It's just that mass migration from Squarespace to Wix or somewhere else, very, very quickly, without a ton of code.
Interoperability is the buzzword that everyone uses. What I'll say is, and I'll kind of dip back into my Web 2 roots there for a moment, is having been a marketer and having built marketing campaigns and built followers on platforms like Periscope and Meerkat that no longer exist, and thinking about that from a pure audience development perspective, you can't take your audience with you from these platforms to platforms. You can't take your content with you between these platforms. You got to re-download, re-upload. But wait a second, that's mine. I own that content. That's my thing, whatever the thing is. Why can't I take it with me wherever I go? And that, I think, it's exactly the approach that we're taking when it comes to the tech that we are building in Web3 to allow brands to bring their products and individual creators, anyone to own their stuff.
Well, that's awesome. So let's dive right into it. So give us the elevator pitch for Threedium and what you guys have built so far.
It's a proprietary 3D engine allowing anyone, I say brands, but anyone from your global retailers down to an individual artist and creator to quickly and easily publish 3D and augmented reality on the web. And I can piece that apart, as much as you want, but it's a tech
It's an
stack.
actual it's an actual challenge. So behind me right here, everyone's watching the little whales swimming, and those are NFTs. They're actual full 3D GLBs that live on a variety of chains. We deploy them onto multiple chains because we like to test and we like to know where they are. So they're currently on Ethereum, Polygon, Solana, and I think they're going to get rolled out to a couple others. Just kind of shows our ability to work with that network, know that network. But I will say it's a challenge. GLB files are a new format. Not a lot of people understand how they work, it's a single file that has the skin, the movements, the textures, as well as much of other data. And while we say it's a standard, it's really not. There's times we try to import GLBs that we get from other sources and they don't work. So, the fact that you guys have designed this and you're really going through with it, talk me through kind of that early adoption phase that you found. Let's stick with brands for a minute, and where they found success in utilizing this format.
Yeah, sure. So I couldn't talk about the platform without talking about our chief technology officer, Dushan Odobasic, and our chief executive officer, Mike Sherlambos. These guys are really the brains behind the tech. The story of the founding of the company is really rooted in display advertising, frankly, trying to create a new interactive media format in a display ad. And the challenge that you just described here, even in 2023, of moving a 3D file on pretty sophisticated marketplaces, you can imagine back in 2017, early 2018, nobody was publishing 3D on the web, or if you were doing it, you were using a gaming engine and a high-powered computer with tons of CPUs in order to process this thing in real time.
Yep.
And what these guys discovered were, in an attempt to make a 3D asset work in a display ad, recognized and invented a method with which to optimize these files for any web browser on any CMS and make sure that it can run in the browser, so that you don't need to rely on an application or a dedicated computer, running a gaming engine, that you could publish these to the web as lightweight formats.
And this is for those of us, that think today, people may be confused about why we think that's a challenge. But if you go back to the early days of Web 1, a JPEG was not a JPEG and was not a JPEG, and a GIF was not a GIF. And you had different, the standards around these formats, were there, but they weren't actually enforced in any way, shape, or form, and computers weren't being as updated as often. So you ran into all these compliance issues that, Mac versus PC versus, some other things. You just ran into a lot of it just didn't load correctly. It some things didn't load at all, even though they were supposed to be the same file format. And so now we've got the same issue, because now suddenly there's all these different chains, there's all these different, new types of browsers and interfaces and metaverses. And what we find right off the bat is that we can say, look, we want to build something in Unity, and in Unity it should be from there it should be fine. Blender to Unity, deploy. And what we found is we worked with a lot of different studios on the yWhales and a variety of other things, and they would send us the files, and they're just, you got to rebuild them. Your local machine didn't accept the files. And so, what you guys are doing is kind of standardizing this, making sure that they're accepted in a variety of different formats, and that it's as simple as point and click, open, and there it works. So it sounds easy, but it's
Yeah.
you have an entire company trying to do this.
Yeah. So these guys, really unlocked that tech in early 2018, and we had some critical innovation partners early on. So Diageo, one of the world's largest liquor companies, looking to digitize their glass bottles, the product that they sell. And I'm going there for a specific reason, which is not only are the challenges, the interoperability challenges you and I just discussed, but specific materials. So glass, notoriously difficult to have it look real in this new format. How can you depict a translucent material inside of a 2D screen, let alone in augmented reality? So in working with I call them our innovation partners. I mean, because we were together helping to solve a problem, which was, how are we going to put glass into 3D and AR? And we start to recognize the opportunity to create new shaders, new glass shaders, new diamond shaders. And then that fast forward to some of the early successes in working with jewelry brands. So once we unlocked glass, the next challenge was diamonds. And so trying to create the most photorealistic jewels that you possibly can, the refraction of each of the carats. How do you refract the light that's actually in the room?
Hmm.
when you place the diamond into augmented reality. And again, all of that running in the browser without the need for a Snapchat filter or an Instagram filter or any app. And I think that is what led to some of the early success with LVMH. So we were a part of the Les Maisons de Accelerator program, working with LVMH, the world's largest luxury conglomerate. There in Paris at Station F, working with the Maisons to basically digitize their products and bring them into this new immersive world.
And to me, I look at the future of immersive technology as a little less of Ready Player One, where you're going to put on goggles and you're just going to go into this immersive, like, dream per se that doesn't really exist in the real world. And I think that I absolutely believe in it. I think it's going to happen. I've got, every, you name it, I've got every type of VR goggle that exists floating around the office, and we've tried every single one of them. And I don't feel like we're even close. But when we start talking about AR, and augmented reality opens up a whole new world, because you don't have to have, the Google Glass or any goggles. Like, they work great on your phone. I tried on Threedium site, for anyone that's sitting on the computer and wants to see what we're talking about. You can just go to threedium.io, and right on your home screen, you've got a Raymond Wells watch. Scan it with your phones, scan the QR code with your phone, and you're instantly have a watch that's anywhere in your room. You can move it around and play with it, and it really showcases the technology well. So I got to play with that for a second.
Awesome.
And that's where I get to, is that there's a lot of times we're spending so much time right now on this immersive world, from just like hey, gamification, playing around. But you've centered in on the fact that there is utility and there is commerce to be had from this technology. And I think that's what's so interesting to me.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts there. One, again, I feel very lucky to have gone through the evolution that I did, because I think understanding the pace of change from Web 1 to Web 2, the pace of change within Web 2 and what users, so being a marketer and really studying target audiences of what's the community want, what are people actually doing. They'll tell you one thing, but in their day-to-day lives are actually doing something else that maybe they're not even able to describe. And what I mean by that is everyone is shopping on their phone and they're swiping through 2D images, but nobody's saying to themselves, 2D images suck. They don't see it as a problem, the problem to be solved. And I am here to say 2D images suck. Like, that is the problem, that the moment you can, move around a chair in 3D and place it into your home, and it is with the same level of effort required to swipe through a 2D image, I've now increased the experience exponentially while reducing the friction to purchase. So I solved a problem that folks didn't even know they had, and created a better commerce experience along the way. And I think that's, to your point, is like, once you see it, once you place that watch on your desk, it's really hard to unsee it. You now have created magic right in front of somebody, and it's becoming normal. People are comfortable now using filters, and I do give the platforms a lot of credit for the training of that behavior. But at the end of the day, I think brands, owners, and creators who are, creating NFTs, who want to showcase that asset how they want to showcase it, they're gravitating to these immersive formats.
Yeah, and like I said, we can talk about the game, like the whales, and we can do a lot of complex things with these, but the idea of, hey, I'd like to buy a product, and generally we'll just talk about Amazon. You've got pictures, and you may have a video. That's great. Does the picture show every single corner of that electronics device you want to buy, or every single around? And they generally don't. And too often I find I'm trying to buy especially an electronic, and there's a port. It's the age old problem. Does it have the port I need? Does it have the connection I need? Well, yeah. What is this? Where is it going? And it becomes all about time. And at the end of the day, time is our most valuable asset. And so what you're seeing here, and Threedium's trying to showcase, and the whales behind are doing a terrible job of explaining. But what you have is that very quickly, with just the swipe of your finger or your mouse, whatever the case is, you can spin the object around. You can see, where does the connection port come in? You can see, what are the other buttons? And generally the other side is you can zoom in. There may be, nobody cares what the three buttons on that microwave say in really fine print, but that may be the difference between you buying or moving on to the next one, and being able to kind of like spin it around and say, this is what I was looking for on an actual product. That, if you're looking to convert sales, and I'm betting especially on jewelry, that's a big deal to see the minute detail and be able to zoom in like that.
Yeah. And it's so easy, a 6-year-old could do it. I mean, I think that's where I come back to the moment I put it in his hands. And he is forever and always going to expect it to do that. He was trying to buy a Rubik's Cube on Amazon the other day, and he was buying a specialty colored Rubik's Cube. It's not your typical RGB colors there, but it was and he wanted to see what the color on the back of it was. And in the photos, it did not show all 6 sides of the Rubik's Cube. Mm-hmm. And here's my 6-year-old son who knows it should be able to spin around, Dad. And he's right. It should be able to. There's zero reason why it can't. And I also think you started to make this point with the VR, and I was making the point as well about the pace of change. I think it's why I'm so focused in on that phone and that experience, because these immersive experiences are happening on that computer in your pocket. And I don't want to spend 8 hours of my day with a headset on. I don't think that's where it's going to be. And I think
we could have saved Zuckerberg $10 billion if he had just asked us.
It's a lot of time and money to waste.
Not. Yeah.
And I do think there is a time and place for that. And I think it might be the equivalent of sitting down to watch a movie. You're not always watching a 2-hour movie, but sometimes you are. Sometimes you want that experience. Or sporting events. I could see that added layer of immersiveness.
Yeah.
But everyday transactions.
This would be great if we could get adoption on airplanes. I just spent the last few days flying around all over the place, and this would have been a nicer experience than the laptop or the iPad to watch a movie. But to be clear, nobody wants to drag this on a plane. It's big, it's heavy, it's huge, and the battery doesn't even last that long. So it's not even right for that type of technology.
I want to connect some of the tech that we talked about to the Web3 piece of the conversation as well, just because we're talking about these immersive experiences. Like how does all this lead Threedium into the world of NFTs and metaverses and other decentralized platforms, etc. It for me started summer of NFT summer, crypto Twitter, jumping in the Twitter spaces, hearing and understanding what was happening in terms of the intellectual property, and Nike's acquisition of Artifact, me watching the Rothschild case from another luxury retailer, talking about who owns the IP. And here we are with plenty of leather handbags in 3D and AR, and luxury watches that are available as digital twins. And I recognized the opportunity to, when those assets are on chain and brands can maintain provenance, mm-hmm. and brands can facilitate aftermarket sales and authenticate their products, the possibilities for 3D as the data carrier are amazing. I see no reason that everything you buy has a digital equivalent, because, and people, well, why would I want that lamp to have a digital twin? Well, I don't know, but maybe you're setting up your game in Roblox, and when you log in with your wallet, all of your lighting is there, right? All of your lamps show up because you've bought them and you have the digital twin, and they're in your wallet, and those assets can now have a digital representation inside of these virtual environments.
Yeah, and I think it makes a ton of sense. And real quick, I want to talk about how we convert these to 3D because
Sure.
I've seen the process done a couple different ways. Generally, there's the full CAD. You got to be a designer. Then you've got the big multi-camera crazy systems. You put the watch or the diamond in a little thing. It spins it around, takes 1,000 pictures of it, and then fills in the blanks. But how are you guys managing that digitization?
A number of ways, and it has evolved over the years as the technology has evolved. So initially, starting with CAD files, so production files typically used, they're going to provide the most precise geometry, but
Mm-hmm.
but not provide the materials. So when I talked about the kind of innovations there around glass and diamonds, apply that to wood and fabrics and cloth, and the CAD really serving as the backbone of the asset itself, and the magic of making it look photorealistic comes with the materials. That's one way to do it, probably the most straightforward way. Over the years, we've also developed our own AI to facilitate a scanner, an iPhone scanner
Hmm.
available in iOS and in Google Play. Unlimited 3D is the name of the scanner, and you can upload somewhere between 30 and 60 still images or a 60-second video. You can doesn't need to be on any kind of fancy background or lighting box or carousel as you described, but upload those pictures from all of the different angles from above, and uh, in approximately 3 to 5 minutes, it will create the geometry of the object and layer the photos back onto the geometry as a 3D asset inside of your account, completely automated. It's
Wow.
not perfect. Um, it gets probably, I'd say, 80% of the job done in terms of, if you're going to have a Raymond Weil watch and there are exquisite details in the leather or within the face of the watch, the marble or the oyster shell in the background there, that we will bring in a 3D modeler to clean up. The magic there is that once you create a material, you can imagine something like a Tiffany's blue box. Once you have that Tiffany's blue box and you understand the shade and the material of the cardboard, uh, you can replicate it 1,000, 100,000, 200,000 times with precise quality control over those materials.
That's amazing. If you wouldn't mind, walk me through some of the bigger successes you've had, where there was just hey, this is the immediately the client was happy, they saw a good response from it. Just love to kind of hear what a couple of those are, and if you don't mind, maybe one or two that just the technology wasn't there yet, or the client's use case wasn't fully evolved would be great as well.
Yeah, sure. So one of the probably my favorite case study that we've done is with Carmina Shoemaker. So carminashoemaker.com, uh, beautiful men's loafers, women's shoes. They are running the entire shoe configurator within their e-commerce site on the backbone of Threedium's engine. So their
Hmm.
entire e-commerce site, I call it the second most powerful 3D configurator in the world, second only to Nike.
Wow.
And Nike ID, what they've done with the Nike Air Max customizer. Um, they have a whole team, an army inside of Nike building this. We have an open source, we have a technology that we can bring to any brand.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, we built 1.2 million permutations of this Carmina shoe. Uh, you can customize the eyelets, the shoelaces, the sole, the inside. You can apply the textures to every layer of the shoe. This kind of gets back to that tech that I was describing earlier, in that we did not have to produce 1.2 million versions of a 3D asset. Um, we simply needed to understand all of the permutations of the materials and the combinations available within their business logic. So maybe you can't buy the brown shoes with the red laces. Okay, great. You guys already have that business logic inside of your CPQ backend, your configure price quote, whatever they're
Mm-hmm.
running, from a pricing uh, in the back end of their e-commerce. We headless API can plug into that existing business logic, pull in the components of the shoe, including the pricing. Um, we can pull in supply levels if you're out of the red laces so that it just simply won't show them. And we don't have to rebuild any of the back end e-commerce. We simply create every permutation of the shoe in real time.
I'm going to tell you, anyone who's listening, I don't care if you're into shoes or not.
They're beautiful.
CarminaShoemaker.com. And you just go to custom while Mike was just explaining this, I went there. I've already customized a pair of shoes in the most horrible way possible, but it's fluid. It loads extremely fast, and exactly what you're saying. You can zoom in and look at the stitching very closely. You can see the details, and it's there was no applets that had to load. It's not didn't ask for Java to be updated. Save it, share it. So I mean, this is a very good e-commerce example, and I know that Nike probably spent quite a bit much more to make theirs work, and this is right here. And I didn't know I could have alligator tips on my boots, but this is fabulous.
So marketing for e-commerce did an actual analytics case study on this particular installation here, and found that Carmina increased its sales by 25% with the implementation of the customizer.
Wow.
They had 25% of their total sales coming through that customizer, and about 73% of that happening on desktop, about 27% of those conversions happening on mobile. You can just imagine, you're providing something for somebody to do, to engage with. And people talk about engagement metrics. Well, what better way to engage somebody than to have them play with it, configure it, change the colors, customize it. So this was, we're really proud of this one. And it's a beautiful, pair of shoes.
So far, I've been able to get up to $4,500 for a pair of boots, nice. Based on clicking in this. So it's repricing it as you go, real quick. So that's a huge, again, showcase of what you're doing. But this is a very Web 2, Web 2 use case. Now, what you're saying is, customize your boots. You're buying them. So you've made this god awful thing that I've made here, and I'll send a screenshot so we can put it up on the screen. But you've customized it, you order it, and not only can you order it and get the physical version, but that custom 3D, like, fine, stick it in your digital wallet. You don't know when you may have an avatar that wants to wear these hideous pony and alligator boots that I've made. And so I think that the concept of it's here, it's you can manage it today. We don't have to come back later and go, hey, what do we want to do with the 10,000 people that ordered them a year ago? Should we send them to them? Should we try to distribute them? I think that you've got the technology right here, and that showcases you can start doing this today. We may not know the utility right now, but you can start pushing these things out into wallets.
Absolutely. I think in the Web3 space, one example, and this might get to the example that we learned a lot from, is the way I'll phrase that. We did an NFT drop with ASICS using the 3D shoe. This was supposed to be during the 2020 summer games that were rescheduled. So ASICS was trying to run the Sunrise collection in partnership with an artist as an NFT drop. We created the 3D asset, the digital twin of these Meta Racer shoes. When I say we learned a lot from it, ASICS doesn't get a ton of credit for that NFT drop because they were so early. I mean, they beat Adidas, they beat Nike. It's the I see you typing in there. It's the Meta Racer NFT drop, and I just think I'd say the learnings from it are actually in a good way, which is Threedium and my team understood that if we were going to help usher brands into Web3, we needed to understand the mechanics ourselves. That we were not willing to rush any brand just because they had a cool asset into an NFT drop if there wasn't a long-term plan for how to reward the community, how to engage the community, how to use the IP. And that's probably the time we started thinking about our latest endeavor, the Web3 product from Threedium, if you will, which is versatile.io, VRSTL.io. And what we're doing is building and turning that entire configuration of a 3D asset to the community.
Hmm.
Anybody with a PFP project who wants to come and create a hoodie, a pair of pants, a hat, a shirt, when I say customize it, I don't mean just putting your logo on it. I mean decorating it, uploading a mid-journey stable diffusion graphic that you prompted in AI, and customizing every inch of your outfit, immediately being able to mint it on any chain and take that asset as a wearable on your avatar into any metaverse. So
Wow.
take that same approach that I described early on with Threedium's approach to Web2 commerce and our ability to publish these assets across multiple channels, uh, maintain consistency and quality over those. Now we're taking that same approach to how are these assets going to show up in Decentraland? What are they going to look like in Sandbox? What do they look like in the other side, in an Unreal Engine environment, in a Unity gaming environment, um, inside of Spatial on avatars, and our ability to take from a single asset and optimize and publish across all of those platforms while minting it on any chain. Uh, Nobody else is doing this right now. I am confident in saying there's a lot of people trying to do it. And as somebody who's been trying to do it for 2 years, I feel like we are really unlocking a massive innovation in
Mm-hmm.
the ability to move these assets both on chain and create this interoperability between the metaverses.
Mike, this has really been an amazing conversation. I think that what I've taken away from this is number one, you can have a very niche view on the market. Have a very niche product, which is just 3D objects. I don't mean to downplay what you guys are doing, but at the end of the day, you're taking an asset that needs to be deployed either into a Web 2 or Web 3 space, and you're making it almost a no code deployment. And that's massive, because I can tell you each and every one of these whales swimming behind us requires a developer, as well as a highly professional 3D artist to build, manipulate, and then deploy. So, and my cost per deployment is quite high compared to you have people that are making shoes, making hoodies, making all sorts of things, and deploying them to either a Web 2 or Web 3 space. So I absolutely see the value of the technology, and I know it's the future, whether you believe in XR, AR, or VR. Like 3D is coming, and we heard something very interesting from Alvin, one from HTC, and that was quite simply that photorealistic is where we need to get. But the idea that you can capture with a video camera and have it just be enough to zoom all the way in is not correct. You have to have that ability to capture with a camera, and then allowing, as you said, 3D designers, developers to fill in the blanks so you can zoom into that microscopic level and not lose a bunch of detail. And so automatically you guys are going to win, just because you have the ability not just to capture, but manipulate prior to deployment. Um, you're in the space. This is what you guys do full time. Talk to me about just kind of your thoughts over the next few years, where you think immersive technologies, or just Web3 overall, are going.
Yeah, thank you again. I hope it has been a fun conversation. You can hear the excitement in my voice. I love what we are doing uh, on the cutting edge of technology, and really working out loud as a team. Kind of hoping that our work shows for itself, and doing cool stuff on the internet. My deep thoughts really I've been forming over the last 18 months or so in terms of intellectual property ownership in the metaverse. As I continue to dive into, what it means to own a digital asset and to
Mm-hmm.
have NFTs in my wallet. I'm watching the wallet wars happen. I'm watching what Coinbase is doing. I'm watching the regulators to get back to that piece of it as well. So I feel like I've got a really macro bird's eye view of what it's going to take to both move brands towards Web3, and for, I'd say, native Web3 projects to understand the frameworks that brands have to work under. And I think it's a little bit of meeting somewhere in the middle. You're seeing a lot of collaborations right now, a lot of overlaps, brands looking for, blue chip NFT projects to work with, and blue chip NFT projects looking for brands to work with. We've got Metaverse Fashion Week happening, in the next couple of weeks, where you've got Tommy Hilfiger and DKNY and Clark's Shoe Company coming into Decentraland and Spatial. The point of all of that, the deep thoughts are, I think the idea of owning a digital asset is becoming more normalized. We won't call them NFTs. I think, you watch what Starbucks Odyssey program and what Adam Brotman has built over there. They're not calling them NFTs. These are digital collectibles, or these are, a rewards mechanism. People understand Starbucks rewards. It's easy. The friction isn't there. You're not worrying about a wallet and NFTs. All of that is that when you buy something on Amazon, today, you are buying a digital picture. You're looking at photos of that thing, that watch, that bottle of shampoo, whatever it is that you're buying. It's a picture of it, and you trust it, and you click it, and you buy it, and that thing shows up at your front door. But it has no other utility. And the moment that you can bring digital ownership of that asset, so that now when I buy that watch on Amazon and it shows up at my front door, I want to be able to log in to my favorite metaverse platform, and my avatar is wearing that watch. I can wear it instantly in its digital form. I can virtually try it on in augmented reality. Why? Because I own it. Why can't I do that? I own it. It's mine. I bought it. I want to take it with me wherever I go. When I walk out the front door, I can wear it in real life. And when I'm on my Zoom, I want it to show up on my wrist as a virtual version. So ownership is changing. 3D, augmented reality, and the convergence with NFTs and Web3 are driving that change.
And I think the idea is, well, the metaverse, no metaverse is one or even come close to it. To me, the concept is of having these digital twins, may not always make sense to people, but, it's something like a watch. Or let's say a car, but we'll take the watch for example. I've been around a lot of insane watch collectors, and what they do is they pull out their phone, they go to their little folder, and then they show you pictures. And they're always scrolling through and they're looking at these pictures of the watches, and you're like, that's great, dude. That's like a picture of a thing, and you really can't understand, like, some of these watches are hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you really don't get a sense of like what this is. Now, I have seen somebody who had a digital twin of they purposely had it made of one of their cars, from scratch, completely had it built, and they were able to showcase this. And let me tell you, it was a much more impressive to look on his phone and be able to like spin his car around with his, with all the customizations and specs on there. And so I think that's a lot of what we're going to see as well, is that you're not going to go to your photo library. You're going to go to your wallet and show off your assets, whether that's in person or over Zoom or chat.
Absolutely. And you hear about, again, I come back to sort of the almost anthropological look at human behavior, but the flex culture, what did social media drive? But people wanting to show off their Ferrari, whether it was theirs or not, in the background. And now I can prove that it's mine and that I own it and that I bought it. I mean, it makes so much sense to me from a pure human behavior perspective.
Yeah, no, I love that. yWhales, this has been a fabulous conversation about Threedium. Mike, where's the best place for people to find you? You have a lot of products and a lot of websites. Is there one that kind of lays them all out for us?
Yeah, Threedium.io is going to be the best place to see and experience those 3D and AR examples. Under the products tab, it sort of goes through some of the things that I talked about, including the scanner, some of the configurator options, and as well as the new Versatile.io Web3 product. So that's the best place to check out Threedium. I'm at Mike Toner on Twitter. That's my favorite place. So follow and DM me if you have any questions.
Fabulous. yWhales, this is Mike from Threedium. Really, this is one of those ones I'm going to tell you, you all have homework assignments, go check it out, play on their site, because it really is fun. And a couple other things we'll make sure is in the show notes underneath this listing is a couple of the other sites that Mike was mentioning, because it's a really fun experience. There's nothing you got to download, nothing you got to purchase, but you really get a good idea of where things are going and the adoption that can happen today. With that, yWhales, see you next time.